Details of the flora already given in description of the Himalayas. Grassland vegetation. In India, natural grasslands are hardly present, and most of them are maintained in their present rise stages due to biotic influences. Thus, grasslands are not climax formations but have developed secondarily by the forest destruction. The two major factors that resulted into their secondary development are adaptive and biotic. The grasslands of India are of three major types. Type 0 phyllis occur in dry regions of northwest India under semi-desert conditions. E. Mesophilus caldus savannas are extensive grass. Flats, typical of Mauda-st deciduous forests of DP, and E. hygrophilus caldus wet savannas. All these are being controlled under biotic influences. Indian grasslands have been classified by White et al. 1954 into 8 major types which are shown in Table 2. Diverse fauna of India. Like flora or fauna, animal life is also equally rich and varied. There are about 77,000 known species. These include about 53,000 species of insects, 1,200 birds, 453 reptiles, 372 mammals, 5,000 mollusks, 2,500 fish, and 450 reptiles. Among the mammals we have elephant found in hot wet equatorial dense forests of Assam, Korea, and Karnataka, with heavy rainfall. Camel and wild asses are found in hot and arid deserts. Camels are common in Thar Desert. The wild asses are confined to arid areas of the Rann of Kachach. One-homed rhinoceros lives in swampy and marshy lands of Assam and North Bengal. An interesting group, Indian bison. The Indian buffalo and the nilgai is also found. Chowsing four-homed antelope, black buck, Indian antelope, hazel deer are a unique group of Indian animals. The deer species include Kashmir stag, swamp deer, spotted deer, musk deer, and mouse deer. Indian lion is most distinct, which is found only in India and African continent in the world. It occurs in deep forests of Saurashtra and Gujarat. Tiger, the most powerful species of the forest, is also found in India. Bengal tiger is found in the sunderbans. Other animals of cat family are leopards, clouded leopards, and snow leopards. The latter are confined to the upper reaches of Himalayas. Several interesting animals live in the Himalayan ranges. Sheep species include wild sheep, mountain goats, ibex, shrew and tapir. Panda and snow leopard are also found here. There are several species of monkey in India, of which the langur is the most common. Lion-tailed macaque has hair around the face. Bird life in India is both rich and colorful. Tiger is the national animal. Peacock is national bird. Pheasants, geese, ducks, mynas, parakeets, pigeons, cranes, hornbills, and sunbirds are found in forests and wetlands. Biogeographical regions of India. The unique patterns of distribution of plants and animals in India had attracted the attention of biogeographers for over a century now. Early in the 20th century, W.T. Blanford identified major faunal zones in India that continued to guide conservationists in biodiversity research and planning until recently. In 1984, the GLI, in collaboration with the Food and Agriculture Organization (FAO), set in motion the reclassification and assessment of India's biogeographic zones. The classification developed at the Wildlife Institute of India. We recognizes 10 broad biogeographic zones in the countries mentioned in the following paragraphs. The Trans-Himalayan zone, 5.6% of the total geographical area, covers extensive areas within and outside India. In India, this zone is restricted to Ladakh in Jammu and Kashmir, Lahore Spiti district of Himachal Pradesh (HP), and the Indian parts of the Tibetan plateau. This zone harbors sparse alpine steppe vegetation with several endemic species. The cold dry desert of this zone is an extremely fragile ecosystem. The Himalayan zone, 6.4%, with mighty mountains, controls the vital life support systems of air and water of the Indian subcontinent. This zone protects the Indian landmass from the onslaught of the cold northern winds and acts as a repository of water for the major rivers of India. The steep slopes, unconsolidated soils, and intense rainfall render the Himalayan zone to be extremely fragile. The Indian desert zone, 6.5%, comprises the Thar and Kutch deserts. The value of desert communities is not so much in their great diversity or density of flora and fauna, but in their extraordinary ecological adaptations to desert conditions. The semi-arid zone, 16.6%, with its dominant grass and palatable shrub layers, supports high biomass. The peninsula of India has two large regions, which are climatically semi-arid. The semi-arid regions of India also have several artificial and natural lakes and marshy lands. Number of species within a mosaic of extremely complex communities. The Western Ghats, 4.0%, are one of the major and richest tropical evergreen forest regions of the country. These forests play an important role in maintaining the water supply of the region as the large river systems of the peninsula of India, the Krishna, Godavari, and Kaveri originate from these ghats. The forests sustain a number of species within a mosaic of extremely complex communities. The Deccan Peninsula, 41.9%, is by far the most extensive zone in India. The majority of the forests in this zone are of a typical deciduous forest fauna. The Deccan Highlands form the principal catchments of many southern India systems. The Gangetic Plains, 10.8%, are one of the most fertile areas in the world and support dense population. As most of the vegetation has been converted into cropland, natural vegetation and the associated wildlife are found in north of Shiwalik Hills and the adjacent Babar and Terai Duar tracts. The upper Gangetic Plains at the base of the Himalayas have some of India's finest wilderness. The country's extensive coast, 2.6%, with sandy beaches, mangroves, mudflats, coral reefs, and marine angiosperm pastures make them wealth and health zones of India. The coastline from Gujarat to Sundarbans is estimated to be 5,400 kilometers long, and as a result, India's exclusive economic zone comprises of stupendous 2 million km2. A total of 25 islets constitute the Lakshadweep, which are of coral origin and have a typical reef lagoon system, rich in biodiversity. However, the densely populated Lakshadweep islands virtually have no natural vegetation. Of all the zones in India, the northeast zone, 5.2%, is perhaps the richest in communities, species, and endemic flora and fauna. It was in the northeast that the northwards migrating Deccan Peninsula first touched the Asian landmass after the breakup of Gondwanaland in the early tertiary period. The northeast zone is thus the geographical gateway for much of India's fauna and flora, and as a consequence, is one of the richest in biological values. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands, 0.3%, are one of the 3 tropical moist evergreen forest zones of India. The Andaman and Nicobar Islands house an array of flora and fauna not cited elsewhere. The elongated north-south oriented groups of islands of Andaman group of islands have a biogeographical affinity with Myanmar. The Nicobar Islands, lying only 90 km away from Sumatra, have much stronger Indonesian and Southeast Asian element. Common flora and fauna of India. India is located in one of the 12 mega biodiverse regions of the world. India has about 47,000 species of flowering and non-flowering plants representing about 12% of recorded world flora. It also has about 90,000 animal species identified, so far representing 7.28% of world's recorded faunal species. India sustains 12.53% of the world's plant and microorganism species. The angiosperms or the flowering plants in India comprise 17,672 species, of which one-third are endemic. Thousands of species of invertebrates might be still unknown to science. The current figure for India with regard to insects, 59,353 species, may change drastically in the coming years, as with many other groups of invertebrates, as more and more species are being identified and named in each passing year. Over 24,000 species of fishes are known in the world. Thousands of species of invertebrates. The Nicobar Islands, lying only 90 km away from Sumatra, have much stronger Indonesian and Southeast Asian element. Common flora and fauna of India. India is located in one of the 12 mega biodiverse regions of the world. India has about 47,000 species of flowering and non-flowering plants representing about 12% of recorded world flora. It also has about 90,000 animal species identified, so far representing 7.28% of world's recorded faunal species. India sustains 12.53% of the world's plant and microorganism species. The angiosperms or the flowering plants in India comprise 17,672 species, of which one-third are endemic. Thousands of species of invertebrates might be still unknown to science. The current figure for India with regard to insects, 59,353 species, may change drastically in the coming years, as with many other groups of invertebrates, as more and more species are being identified and named in each passing year. Over 24,000 species of fishes are known in the world, a majority of which belong to the warm tropical waters. India possesses a total of about 2,546 species of fishes. Habitat-specific freshwater fish communities and diversity are hard to define in India. Those scholars treat 852 species as freshwater fishes in India. Indian amphibians include 1 species of salamander, 23 species of caecilians, limbless amphibians, and more than 200 species of frogs and toads. Many new species have been described in the last 10 years and many more are awaiting. Taxonomic description. The most remarkable species discovery of this century is that of the Jurassic frog Nasicabatrachus cyathrensis. This frog, recently discovered from the Western Ghats region, is believed to be a species that evolved in the Gondwanalands some 150 to 195 million years ago. Endemism is highest among amphibians. The Indian reptilian fauna is amongst the richest in the world, with a large number of species and genera, as well as spectacular forms that delight the eye. The country sustains 2 species of crocodiles and boasts of a family of reptiles Gabulati, represented by a single living species Gharial Gabulus gangeticus. In India 262 species of snakes are recorded, of which as many as 182 species are endemic. The reticulated python, Python reticulus, is the largest and heaviest of Indian snakes, while the worm snake, Lithlina bernina, grows over just 4 inches, and is often mistaken for a worm. There are 20 species of sea snakes, which live and feed in the coastal waters of India. India is home to over 31 species of marine, freshwater and terrestrial, turtles and tortoises, and to some of the fascinating species of lizards and Dachshund, MP and Jammu and Kashmir, brown-antlered deer, Certus LDLD, of the Kaidu Lanjao MP and Manipur, and the swamp deer, Certus duasuli, that occur in central, north and northeast India are unique in more than one ways. The Nilgiri tar, Hamathrugu chilocrius, is the only species of mountain goat found south of the Himalayas. Bats are the only woolly mammals, and there are about 1,000 species world over. India sustains over 100 species, which includes 12 fruit bats. The Saline Ali's fruit bat, Leda is considered to be one of the world's rarest bats. The rodent free-tailed bat, Odomops rodoni, is also a rare mammal, recorded from only 2 places in India. The painted bat, Caribou lepicta, with its brilliant vermilion and black wings, is considered the most vividly colored mammal in the world. Porcupines are the largest rodents of the subcontinent and among the largest in the world. India is home for 27 species of squirrels. The wild equids. India is home for 27 species of squirrels. The wild equids, hedgehogs, scaly anteaters, Indian gazelle, gazelle veneti, sloth bear, Melurus ursinus, hispid hare, Caprolagus hispidus, sea cow, dugong, pygmy hog, susseldonius are some of the other fascinating mammals of India. In the coastal waters of India, 29 species of dolphins and whales are listed. The Ganges River dolphin, Platanus gigantica, is a freshwater dolphin. The dolphin in the Indus River, also a freshwater cetacean, has been recently recognized as a separate species and named Platanus indi. The Irrawaddy dolphin, Orcaela brevirostris, is a facultative cetacean species found in freshwater as well as the coastal waters of India. The immense climatic, soil and altitudinal variations have resulted in varied ecological habitats that sustain this exceedingly rich biodiversity. The unsurpassed beauty, incredible diversity, and phenomenal adaptations of numerous life forms make India a special place on the earth. Apart from the rich natural endowment, Indians have also inherited a glorious tradition concerning conservation. Though a few scholars hold the view that dreaded superstition, blind faith, or animism on the part of people have had a role in conservation of flora and fauna, it is indisputable that Indians have learned to live in harmony with nature, and a benevolent attitude towards nature and wildlife on the part of Indians has had great bearing on the sustenance of the rich biodiversity. And all this wealth is truly nurtured both by the common people by associating themselves with their revered gods and goddesses and by the government through enactment of enabling acts, rules, and laws. Common human parasites and pathogens. A parasitic disease is an infectious disease caused or transmitted by a parasite. Many parasites do not cause disease per se. Parasitic diseases can affect practically all living organisms, from plants to mammals. The study of parasitic diseases is called by parasitology. Some parasites like Toxoplasma gondii can cause disease directly, but other protozoan cause disease by the toxins that they produce. Although organisms such as bacteria function as parasites, the usage of the term parasitic disease is usually more restricted. The 3 main types of organisms causing these conditions are protozoa, helminths, and ectoparasites. A pathogen from Greek pathos, suffering, passion, and gignomicro gen I give birth to, infectious agent, or more commonly germ, is a biological agent that causes disease or illness to its host. The term pathogen is derived from the Greek, that which produces suffering. There are several substrates and pathways whereby pathogens can invade a host. The principal pathways have different episodic time frames, but soil contamination has the longest or most persistent potential for harboring a pathogen. The body contains many natural defenses against some of the common pathogens, such as pneumocystis, in the form of the human immune system and by some helpful bacteria present in the human body's normal flora. However, if the immune system or good bacteria is damaged in any way, such as by chemotherapy, human immunodeficiency virus (HIV), or antibiotics being taken to kill other pathogens, pathogenic bacteria that were being held at bay can proliferate and cause harm to the host. Such cases are called opportunistic infections. Some pathogens, such as the bacterium Yersinia pestis, which may have caused the black plague, the variola virus, and the malaria protozoa, have been responsible for massive numbers of casualties and have had numerous effects on afflicted groups. Of particular note in modern times is HIV, which is known to have infected several million humans globally, along with severe acute respiratory syndrome (SARS) and the influenza virus. Today, while many medical advances have been made to safeguard against infection by pathogens through the use of vaccination, antibiotics, and fungicide, pathogens continue to threaten human life. Social advances such as food safety, hygiene, and water treatment have reduced the threat from some pathogens. Not all pathogens are bad. In entomology, pathogens are one of the 3 Ps: predators, pathogens, and parasitoids that serve as natural or introduced biological controls to suppress arthropod pest populations. 1. Common human diseases. Communicable diseases are caused by some germs passed from one person to another. A disease is caused by bacteria. I. Tuberculosis is caused by Mycobacterium tuberculosis. It affects the lungs, lymph nodes, bones, and joints. B. Diphtheria is caused by Corynebacterium diphtheriae. Oozing of senecio causing choking of air passage. The diphtheria antitoxin, if given within 24 hours of appearance of symptoms. E. Whooping cough pertussis is caused by Bacillus pertussis. Prevention and control. Immunization using DPT vaccine. IV. Cholera is caused by Vibrio cholerae versus. Void is caused by Salmonella typhi. B. Syphilis is caused by Trichomonas pallidum. B. Gonorrhea is caused by Gonococcus, Neisseria gonorrhoeae. B. Disease is caused by viruses. I. Measles rubella is caused by myxovirus. E. Chickenpox is caused by varicella zoster virus. E. Poliomyelitis is caused by enterovirus. The first polio vaccine was prepared by Jonas Salk, 1953. Albert Sabin prepared a polio vaccine that could be administered orally rather than by injection. Viruses are also responsible for many other diseases including influenza, smallpox, viral hepatitis, rabies, and mumps. C. Disease is caused by protozoa. I. Malaria is caused by malarial parasite Plasmodium. E. Amoebic dysentery is caused by Entamoeba histolytica. D. Disease is caused by Helminths. I. Tinnitus is caused by the tapeworm, Tinea solum. E. Ascariasis is caused by roundworm, Ascaris. Lumbricoides. E. Filaria is caused by a thread-like filarial work, Wetteraria bancrofti. 2. Non-communicable diseases. Non-communicable diseases are confined to the persons who are suffering from them and are not passed from person to person. I. Diabetes mellitus is due to the deficiency of insulin. E. Cardiovascular diseases. A. Rheumatic heart diseases result from repeated attacks of rheumatic fever in childhood, which is caused by streptococcal infection of the throat. B. Hypertensive heart diseases are caused by increased blood pressure. C. Coronary heart diseases are characterized by insufficient supply of blood to the heart muscles, which results in heart attack. This is due to thickening and hardening of the walls of coronary arteries by deposits of fatty materials, arteriosclerosis. Sometimes coronary arteries may rupture or clot may be formed in them. It is called an infarction. B. Aching joints. A. Arthritis is caused by inflammation of joints. It is a degenerative disease which occurs with age. There are 2 kinds of arthritis: rheumatoid arthritis and osteoarthritis. 1. Rheumatoid arthritis. It is due to the inflammation of the synovial membrane. 2. Osteoarthritis. The joint cartilage is degenerate and the articular surfaces become rough. B. Gout results from a deposition in and about the joints of salts of uric acid. This is characterized by recurrent acute attacks of severe animation in one or more of joints of extremities. IV. Cancer is characterized by the uncontrolled multiplication of abnormal cells in the body. The spread of cancer cells to distant sites is termed metastasis. It may be broadly classified into three major categories. A. Carcinomas are malignant growths of the epithelial ectodermal tissues that cover on-line of body organs, e.g. skin cancer, breast cancer, lung cancer, cancer of the stomach and pancreas. B. Sarcomas are malignant growths arising in tissues derived from primitive methods, e.g. bone tumors, muscle tumors, cancer of lymph nodes. C. Leukemias results from unchecked proliferation of cells present in blood and their precursors in the bone marrow. 3. Human genetic disorders. Disorders due to incompatibility of blood groups. A. Rh factor incompatibility. Rh factor is a protein on the surface of red blood corpuscles in many persons discovered by Landsteiner and Wiener in the blood of rhesus monkey. Majority of the people, 95 to 99%, have this factor and are classified as Rh positive, Rh plus. Others, 1 to 55%, who lack this factor, are called Rh negative, Rh. If Rh negative pregnant woman carries a Rh positive baby in her womb, anti-Rh agglutinins develop in the blood of mother during first pregnancy. Enough Rh agglutinins will not be produced during the first pregnancy and the baby will be safe. At the time of second pregnancy, if the child is again Rh positive, the anti-Rh agglutinins from the mother's blood will attach to the RBCs of the embryo and death of the fetus may occur. This is known as erythroblastosis fetalis. B. ABO incompatibility. Blood group incompatibility between mothers and child's fetal blood may cause complications. An O-type mother having anti-A and anti-B antibodies in her blood may carry an A-type fetus. Anti-A antibodies reaching fetal circulation may destroy. Anti-antibodies reaching fetal circulation may destroy fetal red cells as they carry the A antigen. The child may be delivered with anemia and jaundice. This blood disorder is known as hemolytic diseases of the newborn. B. Recessively inherited disorders. Some autosomal recessively determinate disorders in humans are albinism, phenylketonuria, and infantile hemorrhagic idiocy, Tay-Sachs disease. A. Albinism, the inherited absence of pigmentation in the skin, hair, and eyes. B. Phenylketonuria is an inborn defect of protein metabolism causing an excess of amino acid phenylalanine in the blood, which damages the nervous system and leads to severe mental retardation. C. Tay-Sachs disease or infantile hemorrhagic idiocy is a hereditary metabolic disorder that causes progressive mental and neurologic deterioration and results in death in early childhood. The disease is inherited as an autosomal recessive trait. Some recessive disorders such as hemophilia, Leber's disease, red-green color blindness, and muscular dystrophy are caused by defective genes on the X chromosome. They are sex-linked. I. Hemophilia is caused by a deficiency of a substance necessary for blood clotting. This is anti-hemophilic factor or factor VIII. Women can carry the disease being affected themselves. E. Red-green color blindness is a defect rather than a disease. Those affected cannot differentiate the two colors. E. Muscular dystrophy is a hereditary disease that causes deterioration of muscles making an invalid of the patient at an early age. The most common form is Duchenne dystrophy, dystrophy related to the face, the shoulder blade, and the upper arm. C. Dominantly inherited disorders. The people exhibiting the dominantly inherited disorders always have one of the parents carrying the gene, e.g. polydactyly, Huntington's chorea, defective enamel of teeth. I. Polydactyly is characterized by the presence of more than the normal number of fingers or toes. E. Huntington's chorea is a neurological disorder characterized by regular and purposeless movements of muscle groups in various parts of the body. E. Defective enamel of teeth gene is located on X chromosome. It is found more frequently in women than in men. D. Disorders arising from chromosomal abnormalities, autosomal abnormalities. I. Down syndrome due to trisomy 21 or mongoloism. Its prominent forehead, flattened nasal bridge, habitually open mouth, projecting lower lips, a large protruding tongue, characteristic skin fold at the corner of the eye, malformed heart, gonads, and genitals, underdeveloped mental retardation. E. Patau syndrome results from an extra third copy of chromosome 13 characterized by mental retardation and severe developmental malformations like small head, a cleft palate and lip, tiny eyes, polydactyly, central nervous system abnormalities, and defects in many internal organs. E. Edwards syndrome is caused by an extra 18th chromosome and is characterized by defective nervous system, malformed ears, and recurring thin. 1. Sex chromosome abnormalities. I. Klinefelter syndrome is caused by the presence of an extra X chromosome in males, characterized by the external genital male type, but the testes are consistently very small, female-like breast development gynecomastia, and his body has sparse hair, usually long-legged, mentally retarded. E. Turner syndrome, monosomy of X chromosome or XO. An XO individually, usually formed by an X carrying sperm fertilizing an egg without X chromosome O. Affected individuals show symptoms like female-like external genitalia, short stature and subnormal intelligence, ovarian dysgenesis, i.e. the ovaries are absent or are present only as primitive streak, web neck, broad shield like chest with widely spot nipples and small uterus. E. Super females. Such individuals have 47, 444XXX, 48, 44, 4X, or 49, 44XXXX chromosomes characterized by abnormal sexual development and mental retardation. IV. XYY trisomy. An XYY male is usually taller, often has reduced intelligence. The presence of an extra Y chromosome as an individual may cause him to be more aggressive and prone to criminal behavior. Common pathogens of crop plants. Plant pathology, also called phytopathology, is a scientific study of plant diseases caused by pathogens, infectious diseases, and environmental conditions, physiological factors. Organisms that cause infectious disease include fungi, oomycetes, bacteria, viruses, viroids, virus-like organisms, phytoplasmas, protozoa, nematodes, and parasitic plants. Not included are insects, mites, vertebrate, or other pests that affect plant health by consumption of plant tissues. Plant pathology also involves the study of the identification, etiology, disease cycle, economic impact, epidemiology, how plant diseases affect humans and animals, pathosystem genetics, and management of plant diseases. Plant pathogens. The disease triangle is a central concept of plant pathology for infectious diseases. It is based on the principle that disease is the result of an interaction between a host, a pathogen, and environment condition. Fungi. The majority of phytopathogenic fungi belong to the Ascomyces and the Basidiomycetes. The fungi reproduce both sexually and asexually via the production of spores. These spores may be spread long distances by air or water, or they may be soil-borne. Many soil-borne spores, normally zoospores and capable of living saprotrophically, carrying out the first part of their life cycle in the soil. Fungal diseases can be controlled through the use of fungicides in agriculture. However, new races of fungi often evolve that are resistant to various fungicides. Significant fungal plant pathogens. Ascomycetes. Fusarium spp. Theliopsis spp. Causal agents of canker. Rot, black root rot, Theliopsis root rot, Verticillium spp. Magnaport grisi TT or ME bar, causes blast of rice and gray leaf spot in turf grasses. Basidiomycetes. Rhizoctonia spp. Ficospora pasteurizicido, causes soybean rust Puccinia spp. Causal agents of severe rust of virtually all cereal grains and cultivated grasses. Oomycetes. The oomycetes are fungal-like organisms that until recently used to be mistaken for fungi. They include some of the most destructive plant pathogens, including the genus Phytophthora, which includes the casual agents of potato blight and sudden oak death. Despite not being closely related to the fungi, the oomycetes have developed very similar infection strategies, and so many plant pathologists group them with fungal pathogens. Significant oomycete plant pathogens. Pythium spp. Phytophthora spp, including the causal agent of the Great Irish Famine 1845-1849. Rice blastus hemobiotropic. Bacteria. Crown gall disease caused by Robacterium bacteria that are associated with plants are actually saprotrophic and do no harm to the plant itself. However, a small number, around 100 species, are able to cause disease. Bacterial diseases are much more prevalent in subtropical and tropical regions of the world. Most plant pathogenic bacteria are rod-shaped bacilli. In order to be able to colonize the plant, they have specific pathogenicity factors. There are 4 main bacterial pathogenicity factors. 1. Cell wall degrading enzymes used to break down the plant cell wall in order to release the nutrients inside. Used by pathogens such as Erwinia to cause soft rot. 2. Toxins. These can be non-host specific and damage all plants, or host specific and only cause damage on a host plant. 3. Phytohormones, for example, agrobacterium changes the level of oxygen to cause tumors. 4. Exopolysaccharides. These are produced by bacteria and block xylem vessels, often leading to the death of the plant. Bacteria control the production of pathogenicity factors via quorum sensing. Significant bacterial plant pathogens. Burkholderia proteobacteria Anthemonas spp. Pseudomonas spp. Phytoplasmas mycoplasma-like organisms, and spiroplasmas. Vitis vinifera with ca. Phytoplasma vitis. Infection phytoplasma and spiroplasma are a genre of bacteria that lack cell walls and are related to the mycoplasmas, which are human pathogens. Together they are referred to as the molecules. They also tend to have smaller genomes than true bacteria. They are normally transmitted by sap-sucking insects, being transferred into the plant's phloem where it reproduces. Viruses, viroids, and virus-like organisms. Pepper-mild model virus. There are many types of plant virus, and some are even asymptomatic. Normally plant viruses only cause a loss of yield. Therefore it is not economically viable to try to control them, the exception being when they infect perennial species, such as fruit trees. Most plant viruses have small, single-stranded RNA genomes. These genomes may only encode 3 or 4 proteins, a replicase, a coat protein, a movement protein to allow cell-to-cell movement, and sometimes a protein that allows transmission by a vector. Plant viruses must be transmitted from plant to plant by a vector. This is normally an insect, but some fungi, nematodes and protozoa have been shown to be viral vectors. Nematodes. Root knot nematode gallstomatodes are small, multicellular worm-like creatures. Many live freely in the soil, but there are some species which parasitize plant roots. They are mostly a problem in tropical and subtropical regions of the world, where they may infect crops. Root knot nematodes have quite a large host range, whereas cyst nematodes tend to only be able to infect a few species. Nematodes are able to cause radical changes in root cells in order to facilitate their lifestyle. Protozoa. There are a few examples of plant diseases caused by protozoa. They are transmitted as zoospores, which are very durable and may be able to survive in a resting state in the soil for many years. They have also been shown to transmit plant viruses. When the mobile zoospores come into contact with a root hair, they produce a plasmodium and invade the roots. Parasitic plants. Parasitic plants such as mistletoe and dodder are included in the study of phytopathology. Dodder, for example, is used as a conduit for the transmission of virus or virus-like agents from a host plant to either a plant that is not typically a host or for an agent that is not graft transmissible. Unit 10. Ecological principles. Institute for Advanced Studies. B7 Saraswati Nagar, Jodhpur. Email, ifastnet@gmail.com. Blank page. Of the environment, physical environment, biotic environment, biotic and abiotic interactions. Ecology is a division of science that examines the interactions between living organisms and their environments. Ecology term was coined by Ernst Haeckel from the Latin words oikos, home, and logos, study of. Ecology is the study of the interrelationships between organisms and their environment and interaction of the biotic and abiotic components of the environment. Ecology is the study of the structure, function, behavior, and interaction of the natural systems that comprise the biosphere. A biological species includes all organisms of a group that reproduce and produce fertile offspring in nature. In simplest terms, organisms that do not achieve this in nature are different species or kinds, because gene flow among them is not possible without reproduction. Most species are divided up into local populations that are partially separated from one another by physical, e.g., mountain or chemical, e.g., saline barrier. Gene flow is reduced but not cut off. The several populations of different species that live together and interact form a community. The community of organisms in their physical chemical environment constitute an ecosystem. According to Taylor, 1936, ecology is science of all relations of all organisms to all their environment. According to R. Mishra, ecology is interaction of forms, functions, and factors. Environment. Environment has different meanings for different people. Most definitions include the physical, chemical, and biological components that influence the life of an organism. The term environment etymologically means surroundings. Thus, environment is a complex of so many things: light, temperature, soil, water, etc., which surround an organism. Any external force, substance, or condition which surrounds and affects the life of an organism in any way becomes a factor of its environment. These factors have been variously called as environmental factors. Ecological factors are simply factors and may be living biotic as well as non-living abiotic. The sum of all these living and non-living factors makes the environment of an organism. The place where an organism lives, habitat, indeed presents a particular set of environmental conditions, the environmental complex. Various ecological factors of this environmental complex have been grouped and discussed in different ways. Sometimes all the factors are classified into two groups. Direct factors. These are light, temperature, humidity of air, soil water, soil nutrients, etc. Indirect factors. These include soil structure, soil organisms, altitude, wind, slopes, etc. According to Osing, 1948, the environment is complex of variable factors or causes, which includes height, substances, soil, water, heat conditions, temperature, light, heat forces, wind, gravity, IV, organisms, plants, animals, and feed time. Daubenmeier, 1959, classified the factors into 7 coordinate headings as height, soil, heat, water, heat, temperature, IV, light, V, atmosphere, V, fire, and P, biotic factor. Most of the ecologists, however, prefer to recognize 4 categories of ecological factors, which like as follows. 1. Climatic or aerial factors. These include 1. Light. 2. Temperature of air, atmospheric temperature. 3. Rainfall, precipitation. 4. Humidity of air. 5. Atmosphere, gases, and wind. 2. Topographic or physiographic factors. These are the factors related with physical geography of Earth and include 1. Altitude. 2. Direction of mountain chains and valleys. 3. Steepness and exposure of slopes, etc. 3. Adaptive factors. These deals with the formation of soil, its physical and chemical properties and details of related aspects. 4. Biotic factors. These are all kinds of interactions between different forms of life, i.e., plants, animals, microorganisms, etc. The real environment interaction of ecological factors. An important aspect of the effects of environment on the life of an organism is the interaction of ecological factors. Actually, under natural conditions, at the same time, the life of an organism is affected by the sum of all ecological factors, the environment, and not by any individual factor. All the factors are interrelated. Variations in one may affect the other. For instance, an increase in temperature would certainly bring out a decrease in humidity values. Increased light intensity, in addition to affecting the rate of photosynthesis, would affect the atmospheric humidity. Thus, at a given time, effect on the organism's life is an overall effect of these interrelated factors, and thus it becomes very difficult indeed sometimes to say which of the individual factors is actually responsible for the marked effect on an organism's life. Thus, ecological factors in affecting an organism's life under natural conditions operate in conjunction and not in isolation, as we have an interaction between various factors. Thus, in considering the ecological factors separately for distinguishing and measuring the effect of each, one must remain aware that in nature these factors never act alone. Organism is subjected to many influences at the same time, and the effect of one factor usually modified by the other factors. The real life of the organism thus involves the simultaneous and continuing impact of all existing interacting ecological factors. Though efforts are made to focus on various components of environment separately in isolation of each other, the environment in fact is not even the sum of all its components put together, but it is a product of interactions between all the components. Since various ecological factors affect the life of an organism in a holistic manner, i.e., all the interacting factors operate in conjunction and not in isolation, it becomes difficult to understand this mechanism of the nature of influence of an individual factor. To understand this mechanism of environmental influence, it thus becomes essential to study the effect of each factor separately, and this is said to be an analytical approach. We shall now discuss in detail each of the above said ecological factors separately to understand how it might influence the life and distribution of organisms. We begin with climatic factors. Climatic factors. Climate of any region is chiefly determined by such meteorological influences as relative humidity of air, temperature, wind pressures, and evaporation rates. Climatic factors characterize, in general, a particular region. These factors, concerned mainly with the aerial environment of organisms, include light, temperature of air, humidity of air, precipitation, rainfall, and gaseous components of atmosphere including wind. We will discuss each of them in detail. Light factor. Light is well known for its effects on such basic physiological processes of plants as photosynthesis, transpiration, seed germination, flowering, etc., and thus is of much concern in ecology, where it plays an important role in the species composition and development of vegetation. Light intensity, reaching the Earth's surface, shows much spatial variations being influenced by some such factors as high atmosphere, chiefly atmospheric gases, nitrogen and oxygen, that absorb and disperse small fractions of the shorter wavelengths, heat, suspended particles, solid particles dispersed in air, such as dust and smoke, or in water, such as clay, silt, plankton, bog colloids, etc., have a screening effect, heat, water layers, IV layers of vegetation, chiefly in terrestrial habitats. As forests, and feed such topographic factors as direction and slope of the land surfaces which cause marked variations in intensity and daily duration of insolation. Radiant energy of sun, reaching the Earth is transformed to other forms of energy, such as thermal, mechanical, electrical, etc., which bring about changes in several physical processes in atmosphere as well as on Earth. Light intensities are closely related with atmospheric temperature and relative humidity. Thus, light affects organisms directly as well as indirectly. The great deal of solar radiation is absorbed in the atmosphere. The amount of light thus is greater at higher altitudes than at sea level. This is due to thinner layers of air at higher altitudes. On a cloudy day, light may be reduced to 4% of the normal intensity. Although red and blue parts of the spectrum are useful in photosynthesis, in ecology relatively less importance is given to the quality of light for its role in plant distribution. The layers of vegetation bring about variations in light intensities reaching at various heights of mountain. This becomes evident when we study light conditions in forests, where a major proportion of light intensity is absorbed by tree vegetation and the light reaching to the lower part of the ground vegetation is considerably reduced by 90-98% of that in the exposed areas. The amount of light reaching the forest floor depends upon the height of canopy, crown development of trees, age of trees, and phenological characteristics of the constituent species. Thus, in a forest, the mature tallest tree receives full insolation, under shrubs receive subdued illumination, and herbs and especially epigenous cryptogams grow in weaker light conditions. When leaves of the tree are fully expanded, its canopy may reduce light to less than 1% of full solar radiation. Salsbury, 1916, as a result of his studies on light conditions in forests, showed that light intensities govern the development of ground flora of the forest. But it is seen that light conditions of forests, with and without ground flora, are not very much different, and thus it seems that not only light, but other factors as temperature, moisture, plant growth, mineral nutrition, humus content, and root competition are also involved. It is also seen that during shade phase, i.e., when full leaves are present on the trees, light conditions are poor, but in nature's sun flex and movement of leaf canopy of trees play an important role in these compensate for the reduced light, making it available to the ground flora. Costing and Shirley 1945 on the basis of a series of experiments, concluded that for each light intensity growth of forest plants may be increased by reducing the root competition. Generally, the cause of death of the tree seedlings in forest stands is the increased competition in roots for the nutrients rather than reduced light intensities. Layers of water have pronounced effects on light intensities. In aquatic bodies, plants are found growing in distinct zones, although such zonation is not always due to different light intensities at various depths. Submerged plants receive weaker illumination than the exposed plants, as some of the light is reflected at the water surface and of the remainder, much is absorbed by the upper layers of water. Light penetration in water depends upon the turbidity, solute content, motion, and planktonic growth of the water. The intensity of light decreases successively with increasing depth. Eadover, in their studies on distribution of plants in English lakes, Pearsall 1920 and Misra 1938 could show that the zonation in such water bodies is not solely due to differences in light conditions at various depths, but the physical and chemical characteristics of the rooting medium, i.e., adaptive factors also play an important role in plants distribution. Importance of mud characteristics in plants distribution has also been recognized for plants of low-lying lands by Misra 1946. Generally at dawn, sunset, and in water, light intensities are weaker. At equator, daylight prevails for about 12 hours out of every 24 in both summer and winter. Towards the poles, in summer day length becomes longer than 12 hours. Light in relation to plants. Directly or indirectly, light affects the plant's light in the following ways. Chlorophyll production. Expect few, like seedlings of conifers, young fronds of ferns, some mosses and algae which may become green even without light. Most of the plants need light for chlorophyll formation. Thus, existence of other life forms, which depend upon plants for food is due to light. Heating action. Exposure of parts of the plants to light raises their temperature, which affect their related processes. Effect on transpiration rate. Indirectly, light affects transpiration rates through increase in temperature. Transpiration rates correspondingly affect water absorption also. Thus, high light intensities are always associated with dry habitats and high transpiration rates. Stomatal movement. Opening and closing of stomata is regulated by light. This is thus related to transpiration and absorption. Distribution of plants. Light conditions at poles are different from other parts of Earth. Thus, total amount of radiation received by the Earth's surface differs with latitude, distance from the equator. This may be one of the reasons for differences in the vegetation at poles and other parts of the Earth. Overall vegetative development of plant parts. Sometimes plants are classified ecologically on the basis of their relative light requirements and the effects of light on their overall vegetative development into heliophytes, growing best in full sunlight, and geophytes, which grow best at lower light intensities. There are some heliophytes, which grow best in sun, but can grow fairly well under shade. Such plants are called facultative geophytes. Similarly, there are facultative heliophytes which, although grow best at lower light intensities, but can grow well in full sunlight. Some plants, likely to be injured by bright light, develop some characteristics in themselves to minimize such effects. For example, plants of sunny habitats have vertically oriented leaf blades. Some variations in the pigments complex of leaves also take place. In moist climates, vegetation is generally a complex series of superimposed layers of tall trees, low trees, shrubs, herbs and mosses, etc., most of which such as maples, beech, spruces, firs, and hemlocks are obligated or facultative geophytes. In dry climates, species of the flora are mostly heliophytes, which are mostly pines, soft maple, willows, tulip tree, birches, larches, and junipers. In comparison to plants growing in the shade, those developing in full sunlight usually exhibit such morphological and physiological features as thicker stems with well-developed conducting elements and mechanical tissues, shorter internodes, more frequent branching, smaller chloroplasts, well-developed palisade with poorly developed spongy parenchyma, roots longer, more in number and much branch with higher root shoot ratio, less chlorophyll content, low photosynthetic rate per unit surface, high respiration rate. Low water content, dry weight basis, higher concentration of salts and sugar and high osmotic pressure, decrease in acidity of cell sap, low potassium contents, early appearance of flowers, and much more resistance to temperature injury, drought and parasitic organisms. Photoperiodism. Total length of the daily light period to which plants are exposed. Photoperiod has pronounced effect on the vegetative growth as well as flowering of the plants. On the basis of their photoperiod, the plants may be short day plants that develop normally only when the photoperiod is less than a critical between 12 to 14 hours maximum. Examples are Salvia splendens, Datura stromonimum, Cannabis sativa, Andropogon virginicus, and Cosmos bipinnatus, and long day plants, those demanding a photoperiod in excess of certain critical minimum. For example, Brassica rapa, Nigella abrawensis, Sicylle cereal, Sonchus oleraceum sorghum bulgar. Most of the plants are short day, which require a relatively long period of uninterrupted darkness for flowering. Some plants are indifferent to the above conditions and are called day-neutral plants. For example, Cucumis sativus, Gossypium hirsutum, Nicotiana tabacum, Phaceolus lunatus, Poa annua, and Solanum tuberosum. Thus, light as photoperiod plays an important role in local distribution of plants by affecting stem elongation, flowering, fruit development, and other processes. Light in relation to animals. So much has been said of the role of light in the life of plants. What about animals? Light has far-reaching effects on animals also, by affecting their several types of activities like pigmentation, reproduction, development, growth, locomotion, migration, etc., which may be summarized as follows. Metabolism. Light affects metabolic processes of animals through its heating effect on tissues and by ionization of the protoplasm. This all results into an increase in the enzymatic activities, general metabolic rate, and degree of solubility of salts and minerals. Animals receiving poor light in caves thus show slow rate of metabolism. Light also affects photooxidation and respiration rates. Reproduction. In animals like birds, light initiates the breeding activities. In some birds, gonads become active with increased light intensity during summer. Thus, animals are long day, short day, and indifferent to day length. Some sheep, deer, and goats are short day animals, which may be brought to sexual act by decreasing the length of exposure to daylight. Spring breeding birds and animals is freest. Starlings, turkeys, and others are long day animals. Ground squirrels, guinea pigs, etc., are indifferent towards the length of exposure to daylight. Development. In salmon, larvae undergo normal development only under sufficient light conditions, in the absence of which there may take place rapid death of larvae. In Mytilus, larvae in their earlier stages grow larger in darkness than in light. Eyes. The degree of eye development sometimes depends upon the available light intensities. In animals, living in caves is Proteus sanguinis, and in the deep sea fishes, the eyes are absent or rudimentary. In surface-dwelling animals as crustaceans and fishes, the ratio of the eyes to head is called as normal. In the ocean, with increasing depth, size of eyes in animals generally goes on increasing. Vision. Higher animals including man are able to see various objects only in the presence of one or other form of light. Some fishes, as Lepomis, also depend on eyesight for location of their food. Pigmentation. Most of the chemical changes that result into the formation of pigments are initiated by light energy. The process of pigmentation in animals is thus influenced by light in a number of ways as height in the development of skin color. For instances, in some animals living in caves, as amphibians and some fishes, the pigments in skin are lacking due to absence of light. Heat in protective coloration. Some animals develop coloration in their skin which more or less resembles with the background in which they live. Thus, leaf insect Phyllium, Australian fish, Philopteryx equian butterfly, Calima paralecta, etc., have coloration exactly like that of their background, and this affords a good means of protection from their enemies. Similarly, some birds, mammals and fish display differential shading, with darker pigmentation on back and lighter one below, that helps them in providing protection. Color changes. Some insects, crustaceans, fishes, amphibians, reptiles, and cephalopods are able to change their color patterns rapidly according to the environmental conditions where they live. This helps in thermoregulation and in affording protection from enemies. Locomotion. The speed to locomotion in some lower animals is regulated by light. This phenomenon is known as photokinesis. There is evidence that blind larvae of mussel crab move faster if exposed to increased light intensities. More or less similar responses in terms of locomotion towards different light intensities are known to occur in some aquatic invertebrates. In some animals, light plays a role in the orientation of locomotion, and this phenomenon of movement of animals in response to light is called phototaxis, and such movements are known as phototactic. Animals like euglena, rentier, etc. are positively phototactic, moving towards the light source, whereas earthworms, slugs, and some zooplanktons like copepods, etc. are negatively phototactic. In some animals, like many tuberculous worms and polyps of many coelenteraces, only a part of their body shows movement in response to light, and this has been termed as phototropism. Photoperiodism. Animals are known to respond to the length of the day through the effect of total light period on such processes as gonad activities, reproduction, metamorphosis, migration, etc. In certain catfishes, longer days induce early maturity. Migration of eels, salmons, and birds is known to be affected by photoperiodism, as some birds are seen migrating towards north during summer when days are longer, and towards south during winter when days are shorter. In some animals, development of fur and feathers during winter is shown to develop in response to photoperiodism. Daily responses of animals to light conditions are known as circadian rhythms, whereas the annual rhythms known as circannual rhythms. Circadian rhythms are internally driven or endogenous, are affected little by temperature changes, are sensitive to a great variety of chemical inhibitors, and are innate, not learned from or imprinted upon the organism by the environment. The innate character of circadian rhythm is demonstrated by several animals. When Drosophila are kept under constant conditions from the larval stage on, they will still emerge from pupae with a regular circadian rhythm. Eggs of chicken and lizards kept under constant condition produce animals that later show regular circadian cycles. The circadian rhythms have been observed in zooplankton, spilachate annelids, many insects, most birds, and some mammals. Planktons of sea and lakes show diurnal changes in their vertical distribution. Solar day, lunar day, tidal rhythms, monthly and annual rhythms are also a common occurrence among animals. Endogenous annual cycles or circannual rhythms have been known in ground squirrels, warblers, and other birds, some crayfishes and slugs. Temperature factor. The term temperature, here, besides the aerial temperature of terrestrial organisms, also includes the temperature of water for aquatic life. In fact, the atmosphere to which aquatic forms of life are exposed is the water medium. Temperature is well known for its effects upon plants and animals. Temperature affects plants and animals in various ways, which are as follows. Effects on metabolism. All metabolic processes are influenced by temperature since temperature regulates the activity of enzymes. All chemical reactions in the body of organism are controlled by temperature. It affects the rates of transpiration, photosynthesis in plants, and respiration rates and other metabolic processes in plants as well as animals. In plants, it affects seed germination also. Effects on reproduction. Flowering in plants is affected by temperature through dermaperiodism, i.e., the response of plant to rhythmic diurnal fluctuations in temperature. Temperature is an important factor in the phenology of plants, i.e., study of periodical phenomena of plants as the time of flowering in relation to climate. In animals, the maturation of gonads or sex cells and the liberation of gametes take place at a particular temperature, which varies from species to species. Breeding in some animals remains unaffected by temperature throughout the year, whereas in some, breeding occurs only in summer or in winter. Some species may have two breeding seasons, one in spring, other in fall. In blowfly Califorus ericae, the number of eggs laid per female increases with increase in temperature up to 32.5 degrees Celsius, but the number decreases with further increase in temperature. Thus, temperature also affects fecundity of animals. Fecundity is the reproductive capacity of animals. The female of the insect, Acritic Protogonus trachearis, becomes sexually mature at 30 degrees Celsius and 35 degrees Celsius and at 25 degrees Celsius, and maximum eggs per female laid at 30 degrees Celsius. In grasshoppers, Melanopus sanguineus and Camellia pellucida produce 20 to 30 times as many eggs at 32 degrees Celsius and those at 22 degrees Celsius. Effect on growth and development. Both extremely low and high temperature have adverse effect on the growth of plants. Low temperatures bring about such cold injuries as desiccation, chilling injury, and freezing injury. In desiccation, tissues are dehydrated and injured due to rapid transpiration and slow absorption during winter. Chilling injury is the killing or injury of plants of hot climate when exposed to low temperatures for some time. In some plants of temperate climates, if exposed to low temperatures, water is frozen into ice crystals in the intercellular spaces causing injury to cells. This is known as freezing injury. Some perennials can tolerate extremely low temperatures and this ability is called cold resistance. Extremely high temperatures cause stunting and final death of plants, which is due to adverse effects on a number of physiological processes as respiration, transpiration, protein metabolism, etc. This is called heat injury. Effect on sex ratio. In some animals, as rotifers and daphnids, sex ratio is affected by temperature. Under normal conditions, daphnids give parthenogenetic eggs that develop into females, whereas with increase in temperature they give sexual eggs which after fertilization develop either into males or females. In Macrocyclops albida there is significant increase in number of males with increase in temperature. Similarly in plague feet. Xenopsila cheeks, males outnumber females on rats on days when the mean temperature remains in between 21 to 25 degrees C. Effect on coloration. Some insects, birds, and mammals in warm humid climates bear darker pigment than the races of same species present in cool and dry climates. This phenomenon is known as blogger rule. In the frog hyla and the home toad phrynisoma, low temperatures induce darkening. Effect on morphology. Temperature also affects the absolute size of an animal and the relative proportions of various body parts. Bergman's rule. Birds and mammals attain greater body size in cold regions than in warm areas, but poikiloderms are smaller in cold region. The tail, snout, ears, and legs of mammals are relatively shorter in colder parts than in the warmer areas. Allen's rule. For example, there occurs difference in the size of ears of Arctic fox, Alopex lagopus, red fox vulpes vulpes, and the desert fox Megatatus certa. Gazella pictus of the Himalayas has shorter legs, ears, and tail than G, but found in the plains. The races of birds with relatively narrow and more acuminate wings tends to occur in colder regions, while those in warmer areas tend to be broader. Wrench's rule. Temperature also affects the morphology of some fishes and is found to have some relationships with the number of vertebrae. Jordan's rule. Thus, through its effect on organisms in various ways described above, temperature affects geographical distribution of plants and animals. Together with moisture, temperature determines the climatic condition of a particular region. Variations in temperature and its effects on distribution of plants. Temperature shows pronounced temporal as well as spatial variations. Especially in a country like India, there are experienced marked seasonal extremes and fluctuations in the temperature values. Soil temperature is the result of heat gained by the absorption of solar heat energy, and soil temperatures are greatly influenced by the latitude distance from the equator of the particular place. Obviously, the temperature values are maximum at the equator, decreasing gradually towards the poles. The division of Earth's vegetation into different zones, as equatorial, tropical, coniferous, alpine vegetations, etc., rests on the marked variations in temperature at different latitudes. Similarly, altitude height above the sea level affects temperature values. Besides latitude and altitude, color and composition of surfaces, plant cover, water content of soil, and such physiographic factors as the steepness of slope, exposure of slope, and direction of mountain chains, etc., affect greatly the temperature conditions. For instance, on mountains, we generally experience a decrease in temperature with increasing altitude, and thus vegetation at different altitudes is different, showing distinct zonation. Generally, mean temperature of air decreases about 10 degrees Fahrenheit for every degree of latitude north of equator, and for every 300 of altitude. In nature, valleys and lowlands are sometimes much cooler due to sinking of the heavier cold than the mountain tops. Changes in both the latitude and the altitude show more or less similar effect upon the type of major vegetations of the world. The various zones of different kinds of vegetation at increasing latitudes from equator towards poles and at increasing altitudes on mountains. Figure 1 air more or less similar, showing that increasing latitude and altitude brings about more or less similar influence upon vegetation. Thus, we may find distinct latitudinal as well as altitudinal zonations in the vegetation. On mountains, temperature and rainfall are commonly said to determine the type of vegetation at different altitudes. But Pearl, GS has shown that at different altitudes, not only temperature and rainfall but adaptive conditions, soil characteristics are also important. On mountains with deviations in elevation, in general, southern and western slopes register higher temperatures than do the northern or eastern slopes. The angle of the slope in relation to sun governs the total amount of radiation. These differences are probably due to different solar radiation received, differences in the amount of rainfall, snowfall, relative humidity, and wind movement on the two slopes. At higher elevations, generally temperature decreases and rainfall increases, and these certainly affect the development of soil and vegetation. Due to low temperature and high rainfall, the organic matter content of the soil increases at higher altitudes, with an increase in soil nitrogen and a decrease in its pH values. Generally, xerophytes are more common at lower altitudes and camophytes occur at higher altitudes. In Himalayas, temperature variations are quite evident, and there is a general zonation of vegetation. Fig. 1 from lower to higher altitudes. The successive zones of vegetation from base upwards are tropical and subtropical, temperate, and alpine. However, there are practically no sharp boundaries between these vegetational zones due to differences in topography, soil, and geology. Thus, on Himalayas, western as well as eastern, the effect of temperature together with altitude and other factors becomes quite evident after studying the vegetational zones at different altitudes. Some persons, on the basis of temperature conditions, divide world's vegetation into various classes as megatherms where high temperatures prevail throughout the year and dominant vegetation is tropical rainforest. E. Mesotherms with high temperature alternating with low temperature and dominant vegetation is tropical deciduous forest. E. Microtherms where low temperatures prevail and vegetation is a mixed coniferous forest type. And IV. Hectotherms with very low temperatures and alpine vegetation being dominant. Effect of temperature on distribution of animals. As discussed above, there are much variations in temperature and these affect plants' distribution in various ways. It also affects animals. All animals are broadly classified into two groups. Homothermic or endothermic animals, warm-blooded. These animals, like birds and mammals, are able to maintain their body temperature at a constant level irrespective of the environmental temperature. Poikilothermic or ectothermic animals, cold-blooded. These are animals as reptiles, fishes, amphibians in which the body temperature fluctuates with changes in the environmental temperature. Thermoregulation in homotherms. Though several factors may operate, the most important role is played by their skin. Almost each of the various structures present in the skin plays a part in the temperature regulation. A homotherm has different response to cold or heat as follows. Response to cold. When a typical homotherm is a mammal is subjected to severe cold, following adaptations help the animal from excessive cooling. The subcutaneous fat serves as insulator and reduces heat loss from body. The hair is raised and brought up into a more or less vertical position by the contraction of the erector pili muscles. Thus air gets trapped in the spaces between hairs. This air is worn by the body and being a poor conductor of heat, it serves as an insulatory layer around the animals. In birds, the same function is done by feathers. The superficial blood vessels in the skin constrict so that blood is directed from the surface to the deeper layers. This reduces loss of heat from the blood to surrounding atmosphere. Extra heat is produced by increase in the metabolic rate, particularly of the liver and muscles. Homotherm besides above said structural adaptations also have physiological capability of increasing their heat production. Response to heat. Heat production is cut down and heat loss encouraged as follows. Animals of hot climates have relatively little subcutaneous fat. The fat deposits are localized. Thus camel's fat is stored only in hump and in buffalo and bison on top of the neck. The hair is lowered by relaxation of the erector pili muscles so that it lies flat against the body surface. There is no space between the hair and no air can be trapped against the skin. The superficial blood vessels are dilated so that blood is brought up near the surface from which it can lose heat to atmosphere. Sweating or panting occurs. Sweating by sweat glands of skin and evaporation of sweat from the body surface cools the skin and the blood flowing through it. Metabolic rate falls in hot conditions so that less heat is generated by the body. Thus in mammals the hypothalamic center functions as a thermostat. It is sensitive to temperature changes of blood flowing through and responds by sending nerve impulses through efferent nerves to the appropriate effectors. If the temperature of the blood is slightly higher than it should be, the thermoregulatory center hypothalamus of brain detects this and sets into motion processes that collectively encourage heat loss. On the other hand, if the temperature falls below the normal, this in turn initials processes that produce and conserve heat. Thermoregulation in poikilotherms. Some poikilotherms avoid both heat and cold by underlying dormant in period of environmental stress. Many insects, some crustaceans, mites and snails, enter diapause, a state of dormancy and arrested growth. Eggs, embryonic larvae and pupae are involved. Some poikilotherms become dormant in temperature extreme conditions. Amphibians and turtles bury them in the pond mud. Snakes and lizards seek burrows. A few exceptional poikilotherms, especially insects, certain amphibians and reptiles, exercise a degree of thermoregulation by physiological or behavioral mechanism. For example, hawk moths can raise the temperature of their flight muscle to 32 degrees minus 36 degrees Celsius by vibrating the wings before takeoff, and gregarious butterfly larvae may raise their temperature 1.52 degrees Celsius by clustering together. Locusts and grasshoppers may increase temperature L0C by basking sideways in the sun. Ants move their larvae to warm or cool places. When temperature drops, lizards bask in the sun to achieve more temperature. Once this temperature is attained, they will divide their time between sun and shade to maintain it. The frogs and reptiles lower their body temperature slightly by evaporating cooling through the skin or via the respiratory tract by panting. Temperature affects the distribution of animals also, as different species have different ranges of their temperature requirements. For instance, coral reefs require a minimum temperature of 21 degrees Celsius for their suitable growth, hence are completely absent in colder regions, where prevailing temperatures are below 21 degrees Celsius. Speckled trout, Salvelinus fontanellus, prefers 14 degrees Celsius to 19 degrees Celsius, and thus cannot tolerate a temperature above 25 degrees Celsius, being thus completely absent from streams where the temperature exceeds 24 degrees Celsius for some time. Distribution of intertidal bonicles is also affected by temperature. For example, an intertidal bonicle, Pecten groenlandicus, is hardly known to occur in areas with 0 degrees C temperature, whereas another one, Balanus phallonoides, occurs at a temperature below 7.2 degrees Celsius. Precipitation, rainfall. Precipitation is the chief source of soil water. The water available to plants and animals from soil comes as a result of rainfall. There occurs an interchange of water between the Earth's surface and the atmosphere, forming the water hydrologic cycle. The two important events which are involved in this cycle are precipitation and evapotranspiration. In fact, water during rainfall is directly of little or no use to the organisms. It is used only after reaching to the soil. Precipitation is the result of gravitational pull on the vapor and atmosphere. Precipitation occurs in various forms. These are drizzle, rain, snow, dew and frost, sleet and hail. Drizzle involves minute drops appearing as to float in air. Rain is the drops of liquid water, which are larger than drizzle and also heavier. Snow is the moisture of solid state, and dew and frost are formed due to condensation of moisture directly on the surfaces of objects, plants, animals, soil, etc. Sleet is in the form of small grains or pellets of ice, whereas hail consists of balls or lumps of ice. Snow is injurious to plants, breaking tender branches, flowers and fruits. Hail and sleet also cause similar damage. Some sedges grow in snow patches. Of all the above forms of precipitation, the rain is the most important. It is the source of soil water and also affects humidity of atmosphere. Rains in India are caused by monsoons. About 45% of the water available during annual precipitation flows into rivers, 20% percolates into the ground, and the remaining 35% is lost by evaporation. The amount of annual rainfall greatly influences the vegetation as well as animal population of a particular region. Rainfall distribution in different seasons of the year also may further be important in regional distribution of vegetation. On high mountains, the regions are correlated with the distribution of rainfall. And there are distinguished three regions: high lower region with scanty rainfall, middle region or a cloudy region with a lot of rain, and upper dry region above the clouds covered with snow and ice. Annual rainfall determines the type of vegetation in any region. For example, in tropical areas with heavy rainfall throughout the year, main vegetation are evergreen forests. In countries with heavy rainfall during winter and low during summer, there are present sclerophyllous forests. The plants are shrubs stunted in height, with leathery, thick, evergreen leaves. The areas with heavy rainfall during summer and low during winter are characterized by the presence of grasslands. The regions where rainfall is scanty are seen with deserts and xerophytic vegetation. In India, due to differences in the amount of annual rainfall and its distribution in different seasons of the year, we find that vegetation types in different parts of the country are much different from each other. Similarly, with changes in vegetation, we also find different types of animals in different geographic regions. Humidity of air. It is one of the different forms of water in nature. Atmospheric moisture in the form of invisible vapor is known as humidity. The humidity of air is expressed in terms of relative humidity values. It is the amount of moisture in air is percentage of the amount which the air can hold at saturation at the existing temperature. Humidity is greatly influenced by intensity of solar radiation, temperature, altitude, wind, exposure, cover and water status of soil. High temperature increases the capacity of the air to retain moisture and cause lower relative humidity. Low temperatures cause higher relative humidity by decreasing the capacity of air for moisture. Relative humidity is measured by the instrument called psychrometer or by paper strip hygrometer or thermohydrograph. Daily variations in relative humidity values depend upon the type of habitat conditions. In plains and deserts, it may show variations during day, whereas in oceanic islands there is little variation, being same throughout the year. Of the other factors of aerial environment, humidity plays an important role in life of plants and animals. Processes of transpiration, absorption of water, etc., are much influenced by atmospheric humidity. The saturation deficit, temperature and wind velocity modify evapotranspiration rates. Saturation deficit, as in Hg, is the difference between the pressure of water vapor in the atmosphere at a given time and the maximum vapor pressure that it could contain at the same temperature. A decrease or increase in the saturation deficit causes a fall or rise in evaporation rate respectively. Similarly, temperature variations also influence evaporation. Dry winds decrease the amount of air moisture by removing moist air about plants and mixing it with dry air, which decreases the humidity and thus increases transpiration. Thus, humidity affects the life of plants in various ways. Effects of moist air on plants are more or less similar to those of reduced light intensity. Some plants as orchids, lichens, mosses, etc., make direct use of atmospheric moisture. In fungi and other microbes, it plays an important role in germination of spores and subsequent stages in life cycle. Atmosphere gases and wind. The term atmosphere here includes only the thick gaseous mantle surrounding the Earth. As we will see later, the soil too has its own atmosphere. There are pore spaces in between soil particles as well as between aggregates, and such spaces make the atmosphere soil. The present discussion on atmosphere as an ecological factor would include the effects of principal gaseous constituents present in atmosphere, wind and fire on the organisms. Atmospheric gases. Up to the height of about 300 kilometers above the Earth's surface, there is present some sort of a thick gaseous mantle. With increasing height above sea level, the atmospheric pressure gradually decreases. In atmosphere, about 95% of the total air is present up to the height of about 20 kilometers above Earth's surface and the remaining 5% in the rest about 280 land. Height. In the gaseous mantle, there is found a mixture of different gases in different proportions. Of these various gases, nitrogen, oxygen, and carbon dioxide are the major components. Relative proportions of different gases by volume are shown in table 1. Gases percent. By volume, gases percent. By volume. Nitrogen 78.0841, krypton 0.00011, oxygen 20.9486, xenon 0.0009, argon 0.9340, hydrogen 0.00006, carbon dioxide 0.0318, methane 0.0002, neon 0.0018, nitrous oxide 0.0005, helium 0.0052, ozone 0.000004. Besides gases, some other constituents are water vapors, industrial gases, dust and smoke particles in suspended state, microorganisms, pollen grains, fungal spores, etc. Cycling of gases is carbon dioxide, nitrogen, etc. between the atmosphere, soil, and organisms is a regular feature of nature. The detailed structure of atmosphere is given by Sutcliffe, 1966, is shown in figure 2. Atmosphere can be roughly divided into 4 zones. Troposphere, the basal part of atmosphere, which is about up to 20 kilometers above the Earth's surface, on poles only up to 8 kilometers, is known as troposphere. For organisms, this is the most important zone of the atmosphere. The important events, such as cloud formation, lightning, thundering, thunderstorm formation, etc., all take place in troposphere. Air temperature in this zone gradually decreases with height at the rate of about 6.5 degrees Celsius per kilometer. Towards the upper layers of troposphere, the temperature might decrease up to minus 60 degrees Celsius, and this limit of troposphere, which gradually merges into the next zone, is known as tropopause. Stratosphere, next to troposphere, the second zone of about 30 kilometers height, is called stratosphere, where the temperature values show an increase up to 90 degrees Celsius. This increase in temperature is due to ozone formation under the influence of ultraviolet component of sunlight. Upper layers of stratosphere form stratopause. Mesosphere, about 40 kilometers in height, the zone next to stratosphere is called mesosphere. In this zone, temperature shows again a decrease up to minus 80 degrees Celsius. Upper layers of this zone are mesopause. Ionosphere, the rest above the mesosphere, up to the height of above 300 kilometers above Earth's surface is ionosphere. Most of the gaseous components which become ionized under the influence of radiant energy remain as ions. Due to their much less density, they are rarely present in molecular form. Thus, radiant energy brings about considerable changes in the atmosphere. Water vapor in the atmosphere affects the temperature and light intensities of atmosphere. Wind factor. Air in motion is called wind. It is an important ecological factor of the atmosphere, as it affects plants life mainly on flat plains, along seacoasts, and at high altitudes and mountains. Wind is directly involved in transpiration, in causing several types of mechanical damage, and in dissemination of pollen, seeds, and fruits. It also modifies the water relations and light conditions of a particular area. The velocity of wind is affected by such factors as geographic situation, topography and vegetation masses, and position with respect to seashores. Effects of winds are much pronounced in plants along the seacoasts and at high altitudes on mountains. Air moves from a region of high to that of low pressure. The pressure differences are mainly due to differential heating of atmosphere. The equatorial regions receive more heat than north or south regions, thus low pressure occurs at lower latitude. The air generally moves from the poles towards equator. Wind brings about a number of physical, anatomical, and physiological effects on plants. These physical effects are as follows: height breakage and uprooting, heat deformation. Strong winds from a constant direction sometimes cause permanent alteration in the form and position of the shoots. Heat lodging, IV, abrasion, B, compression wood, and beat desiccation. Fire factor. Except those fires caused by lightning or volcanic activity, which are rare and confined only to certain specific areas, most of the fires very common in most of the regions are of biological origin. These are mostly man-caused, and sometimes, chiefly in forest, develop due to mutual friction between tree, bamboos, etc. surfaces. Fires are generally classified as ice ground fires, which develop in such conditions where organic matter accumulates richly as heat and they catch fire, which generally smolder for longer periods. These fires are flameless and subterranean and kill almost all plants rooted in the burning material except some woody species. Heat surface fires which sweep over the ground surface rapidly and their flames consume the litter, living herbaceous vegetation and shrubs, and also scorching the tree bases that come in contact. Heat crown fires which are most destructive, burning the forest canopy, surface debris, and bringing about vegetational destruction at larger scale. These develop in dense woody vegetations. Temperatures that prevail when fires in progress may reach up to 1,300 degrees Fahrenheit. Effects of fire. In addition to its direct lethal killing effects on plants, fire also affects them indirectly in the following ways. Some trees, as a result of injury by fire, have large scars on their stems. Such scars may serve as suitable avenues of entry of parasitic fungi and insects. Fire brings about marked alteration of such environmental factors as light, rainfall, nutrient cycles, fertility of soil, litter and humus contents of soil, pH, and soil fauna. Sometimes the habitat needs thousands of years in the return of normal conditions. The nature of such alterations depends mainly on the nature of fires. Fire plays an important role in the removal of competition for surviving species. Such species that fortunately survive fires, fire tolerance generally increase in abundance at the expense of those killed by fire, fire sensitive, as a result of considerable reduction in competition and possibly due to alteration in other conditions. Some plants as populous tremuloids and epilobium and vestipholium are stimulated to growth by fires. A number of such grasses as Aristea stricta, Cynodon dactylon, Paspalum etc. are stimulated by fire to produce large quantities of seeds. In some grasses and legumes, the seeds would germinate only after these get fire treatment. Their seeds have much degree of tolerance to temperatures due to fires. Common examples studied are species of the meta, heteropogon, Andropogon, Rheus, Tephrosia, and Stipa. Some fungi, mainly some ascomycetes, grow in soils of burnt areas. Such fungi are known as pyrophyllas, as for example Pyromacondulans. Adaptations to fire. In areas where fires are very common, the plants have developed some features that favor their survival under such conditions. These adaptive features are as follows. Some shrubs belonging to the genera Rheus, Ceanothus, or Arctostaphylos produce seeds in large numbers and whose seed coats are very hard. The breakage of hard seed coats depends on fire, after which seedlings appear in large numbers. It is experimentally proved that their seeds need a temperature of about 80 degrees Celsius for maximum germination. Some woody plants that develop fire-resistant seeds or fruits have unique property of completing their life cycles within a short period by virtue of their rapid rate of growth and development. Within this short period, there never accumulates organic debris and thereby chances of surface fires reduced. Seedlings of Pinus palustris grow at rapid rate, and inferior cataphone development starts when plants are only 1 meter tall. In some plants, leaves are fire-resistant due to poor contents of such compounds as resin or oil, and thus may check surface fires. Similarly, Quercus macrocarpa, Larix occidentalis, Pinus palustris, and P. ponderosa have thick bark which often escape fire injury. Some plants as Pinus rigida and species of Eucalyptus have adventitious or latent axillary buds which may develop into new branches. Similarly, Betula papyrifera and Vaccinium spp. may develop new shoots after fire kills the older ones. In chaparral vegetation of Europe, North America, and Australia, many shrubs, as species, of Eucalyptus and Arctostaphylos have evolved special turnip-shaped swellings of their axes remaining entirely below the ground surface, which have latent buds. These structures are known as linotubers which may produce new shoots. A number of conifers, as Pinus contorta var. Latifolia, P. plaza, P. liaophylla, Pisceum mariana produce serotinous cones i.e., cones remaining on trees with viable seeds for several years sometimes, up to 75 years. Fires cause the prompt opening of these cones. 3. Topographic physiographic factors. It has just been pointed out that climate of any area is chiefly determined by the interactions of solar radiation, atmospheric temperature, relative humidity and annual rainfall. Each of these climatic factors, besides latitude and altitude, is greatly influenced by the topography of the area. We have seen how light, temperature, moisture, etc. may vary at different height on mountains' altitude, as well as at different distances from the equator latitudes. Topographic factors are concerned with the physical geography of the Earth and the area. Earth's surface is not similar in different regions and may show several irregularities. Such topographic factors influence vegetation by producing variations in the climate of geographical region. Such variations in climate due to these factors give rise to characteristic local or even microclimates, or may even modify soil conditions. Thus, the effect of topographic factors is mainly indirect primarily through their effects on climatic factors. The chief topographic factors have been discussed here. Height of mountain chains. Mountains, hills, hillocks, valleys, etc. are formed due to irregularities in the surface of Earth. Effect of different heights altitude can be better seen on mountains. With an increase in altitude above sea level, there are changes in values of temperature, pressure, wind velocity, humidity, intensity of solar radiation. Due to these changes, vegetation at different altitudes differ much. We have seen how the two, eastern and western Himalayas differ in respect of the vegetation types at different altitudes. Fig. Point 1. Direction of mountains and valleys. Mountains steer or deflect winds into different directions and capture moisture from wind on certain sides. Consequently, water vapor may accumulate only in some preferred directions as clouds which come down as rain. This may be the reason why on certain sides and at a particular height one may see luxuriant forests, whereas on other sides and at lower levels the vegetation is scanty, in number as well as variety and shows xeric tendencies. Thus outer Himalayas show frequent rains with luxuriant vegetation, while the middle and inner Himalayas are dry with poor vegetation. In fact, moisture in the wind is condensed and deposited at the outer Himalayas before it reaches the middle and inner ones. Similarly, southern side of Kulu Valley in Kashmir is moist with rich vegetation, whereas at lower level into the Lul Valley there is very poor vegetation. High mountains not only act as climatic barriers to air masses between neighboring areas or zones but also cause local air circulation, giving rise to mountain winds. The most common winds in such areas are slope winds which blow downhill during night and uphill during the day. These winds are frequent over glaciers in Antarctica. Relative humidity depends upon the direction of the air, whether it comes from north or south, as well as on the habitat, i.e., from a sea, desert or forest. The heating of Earth's surface is directly proportional to the angle at which solar rays arrive on the ground. Thus mountains affect the climate through rainfall and other factors. Steepness of slope. Slope is a characteristic feature of mountains. Steepness of a slope affects the amount of solar radiation received during the day, and soil characteristics primarily through its effect on rate of water flow. In the northern hemispheres, at higher altitudes, steepness of slope increases the exposure of the surface to sun on the southern slopes, whereas the northern slopes remain cooler. This is due to the fact that the steep southern slopes receive the rays of the midday sun almost at right angles, whereas the northern slopes receive only oblique rays during morning and evening hours and sometimes none at all except for a short period during summer. This difference in solar radiation and consequent temperature values bring about changes in the vegetation on the two slopes. Thus, northern slopes protected from sun support virgin forests with hygrophilous brown vegetation, whereas the southern slopes, heated by sun, have only a xerophytic vegetation. These are due to local climatic differences on two slopes. Speed of water flow is also determined by the steepness of slope. It affects soil characteristics. Most water on the sloping side flows down rapidly and little is allowed to reach the soil. Thus, loss of water is runoff is more with increase in steepness of the slope. Thus, two sides, one sloppy and other plain, of mountain, in spite with similar annual rainfall may bear different vegetation. On a steep slope, plants are unable to establish, even if there is sufficient rainfall. Soil erosion is also related with the steepness of the slope. Even with heavy rainfall on a steep slope, active soil erosion and denudation due to runoff result in the disappearance of the plants from the area. Eroded hills, steep slopes and rock faces may produce a special habitat where only a particular group of plants can adapt themselves. Gravel, sand or clay eroded by water, wind, etc., from rock surfaces are generally brought down by rivers and streams and these become then deposited as silt at their mouths, providing new habitats like salt marshes which may support different kinds of plants. Exposure of slope. Exposure of slope to sun and wind affects very much the kind of plants growing there. Generally, the slope exposed to the sun and wind supports vegetation which may be entirely different from that which is less or not at all exposed to sun and or wind. This is the reason why greenhouses and hotbeds in temperate climates are always built in a way so as to face the sun or on southern slopes, which receive much heat from the sun. IV. Biotic factors. Under natural situations, organisms live together influencing each other's life directly or indirectly. Such vital processes as growth, nutrition and reproduction depend very much upon the interactions between the individuals of the same species, interspecific interaction, or between those of different species, interspecific interaction. Pollination, seeds and fruits dispersal, grazing, parasitism, symbiosis are the common examples of such interactions. As a whole, such interactions become indeed very much complex. The effect of man upon vegetation has been much pronounced. Under natural conditions, we find interdependencies between animals themselves, between plants themselves, as well as between plants and animals. Such interactions are found in various gradations, being for whole life or casual and temporary. Moreover, interdependency may exist between species which are taxonomically widely different, such as between trees and bacteria, or between elephants and ants. The relationship between species may be beneficial to both, harmful to both, or beneficial or harmful to one and neutral for the other. For different types of relationships among organisms, various authors have used different terminology. There is no general agreement on various terms. We shall now consider the various kinds of relationships among organisms and the different terms used for them. Relationships among organisms. Most of the ecologists are in favor of the use of the term symbiosis, which literally means living together, in its broader sense. The term symbiosis, with a similar intention, was proposed by de Bary 1879. Thus, most of the ecologists include all types of interactions including parasitism under symbiosis. Odom 1971-2, agreeing with the use of the term in its broader sense, divided all types of symbiotic relationships between organisms into two groups, I positive and E negative interactions. But others, like Clark 1954, restrict the use of the term symbiosis only for such types of interactions which are mutually beneficial, and where one or both the species are benefited and neither is harmed. The relations where at least one of the species is harmed have been grouped under antagonism. The various symbiotic phenomena between organisms have been grouped and interpreted in various ways by different authors. For instance, Haskell 1949 proposed the idea of a stronger and weaker partner in the two species involved during their association. On the basis of the evident effects of such an association, there were proposed a number of such terms as predation, allotropy, symbiosis, amensalism, neutrality, commensalism, syncrosis, allolemia, and parasitism. McDougall 1918 grouped all, i.e., beneficial as well as harmful effects of association under the single term symbiosis, and classified them into two major groups: I disjunctive symbiosis where associated organisms are not in constant contact, and E conjunctive symbiosis where dissimilar organisms live in contact with each other. Each of the two has been further subdivided into social, no direct relationship, and nutritive with food relationship. The latter may be antagonistic or reciprocal. Lianas and epiphytes have been classified under social conjunctive symbiosis, parasites under antagonistic nutritive conjunctive symbiosis, and the lichens, mycorrhizae and nitrogen-fixing organisms under reciprocal nutritive conjunctive symbiosis. Haskell's elaborate classification of coactions between species is adopted by Burkholder 1952, who on the basis of several combinations of zero, no significant interaction plus growth, survival, or other population attribute benefited, and population growth or other attribute inhibited between two species. The various types of interactions have been grouped into 9 types of interactions. The possible combinations are 0, 0, plus, plus, plus O, minus 0, plus, 3 of which plus, plus, and plus have in turn been commonly subdivided, and the whole scheme resulted into 9 types of possible interactions, which have been explained in Table 1. Odom 1971 used the term symbiosis in its broader sense and preferred to group all the above 9 types of symbiotic interactions into two major groups. Positive interactions. Where populations help one another, the interaction being either one way or reciprocal. These include I commensalism, E protocooperation, and E mutualism. Negative interactions. Where members of one population may eat members of the other population, compete for foods, excrete harmful wastes, or otherwise interfere with the other population. These have been subdivided into I competition, E predation, E parasitism, and IV antibiosis. In the present discussion by the author, the term symbiosis has been used in its broader sense, and all types of interrelationships, following Odom 1971, have been grouped into above said two major groups. However, the detailed scheme is somewhat different. Before we proceed to discuss individual type of interaction, it would be desirable to present first an artificial key that would help understanding various types of such interactions. B1. Concepts of habitat and ecological niche. Home range. It's an area where the individual travels to conduct its normal activities, commonly larger than defended territory. Theoretically, it contains all resources needed to survive and reproduce over time. Territory. Area of home range defended against conspecifics. It contains resources that can be defended. Size varies with resource abundance and population density. Territorial behavior can restrict numbers of animals in an area and therefore regulate populations. Habitat. The suite of resources and environmental conditions that determine the presence, survival, and reproduction of a population. It's an organism's address, where an organism lives where food, water, cover, and enough space is available. It actually represents set of environmental conditions suitable for organism for its successful growth. 1. Ecological niche. A. The concept of Grinnell's spatial or habitat niche. The idea of ecological niche has developed a great deal since it was first defined by Grinnell in 1904. According to this author, niche corresponded to habitat. It concerns with physical space occupied by an organism, e.g., distribution of 7 species of millipedes in forest floor of maple oak forest. As ecology became increasingly a systemic science, scientists wished to give this simplistic term a functional meaning, and it was abandoned for other concepts. B. The concept of Odom tropic niche. The first systemic definition was given by Odom in 1971. It is concerned with tropic position of an organism, e.g., occurrence of various species of birds in Galapagos Island. On the analogy of a visiting card, Odom said that the habitat of an individual represents an address, the ecological niche of profession. A doctor does not necessarily live in his clinic, where patients find him practicing his skills. Under the term of profession, it is necessary to consider the role of various species of the biocenos, their adaptations, needs, tolerances, way of life, in sum, their functions in the framework of the ecosystem. C. The concept of Hutchinson. The most holistic concept is that of Hutchinson, who combined the ideas of habitats and functions. His idea can be illustrated by an example cited by Blundell, 1979, as described below. A. Preference of carnivorous birds vis-a-vis the weight of grain consumed. Imagine a forest ecosystem in which there are plants producing seeds whose weight varies from 0.1 to 10 milligrams. Imagine a bird packing its grains of any weight. By definition, it is behaving like an art strategist or generalist. In its digestive tract are grains of all sizes according to the curve in figure. It, in effect, consumes all sizes of grains available to it. For the small grains 2 minus 3 milligrams, for example, the bird will waste energy by trying to feed on them. Not every pack will be successful because the grains are very small. Nevertheless, it expends energy in the form of ATP to peck at them. It is the same for large grains 8 minus 9 milligrams, for example, which will often have to be broken up before being ingested, which sometimes requires an expenditure of energy higher than that recovered from the morsels ingested. What will happen ultimately is that other birds much better adapted to picking up a given size of grain will be more efficient and invade the ecosystem. A bird with a fine beak will more accurately take the smaller grains. One with a larger beak will take the large grains. The R strategist competing for use of the resources with several very efficient K strategists has no alternative but to emigrate or to remain in the biotope in very small numbers. 2. Hutchinson's multidimensional model of ecological niche. When a settlement is dominated by R strategists, there is a small number of species with a large number of individuals. On their part, the K strategists can live together if each exploits a part of the environmental resources. The specialist species do not compete, since they complement each other. The jay, for example, feeds mostly on acorns, and the woodpecker on Xylophagus larvae. The specialists also occupy all the ecological niches. Ultimately, they limit losses and waste. Does this mean that one of the specialists we have described in Blundell's example pig will be present in all the ecosystems on Earth in which grain of the appropriate size 4 minus 7 milligrams, say, is available? The answer is no. Each species shows preferences with respect to several parameters. Our bird could also frequent dry zones and accept only a rainfall between 400 and 800 millimeters. To go further, it could prefer temperatures between 12 and 18 degrees Celsius. There would thus be 3 parameters to consider, a small number in relation to all the demands and tolerances presented by each species taken separately, such as hygrometry, insolation, wind speed, and competition, to name only a few. With the 3 parameters of grain size, rainfall, and temperature, we can construct an extremely simplified figure that gives an idea of the multidimensional representation of the ecological niche of a species pig. 3. Fundamental niche and actual niche. Each animal or plant species having its own vital preferences can develop very well within its adaptive potentialities, taking into account competitions. In consequence, its ecological niche corresponds to the hyperlume present in figure. This hyperlume is called fundamental niche. Most frequently, abiotic conditions, and above all interspecific competition, ensure that the species does not express its entire genetic potential. It develops only a part of its potential. The hyperlume obtained in a given ecosystem is much smaller than what is possible, and this is the actual or realized niche. It is therefore possible to find the same species in seemingly different abiotic and biotic conditions in the biosphere. These will nevertheless always be within the hyperlume of the fundamental niche. Moreover, when we study a species in a defined ecosystem, we analyze only a very small part of its global population, and that part does not present all of the genetic potential that species may have throughout the world. This means that its actual ecological niche is not necessarily the potential ecological niche in the common sense of the term. Ecological equivalents. Species that use similar niches in different habitats or locations. Guilds. Group of species with comparable role and niche dimensions within a community. 4. Rand K strategists and ecological niche. A. The ecological niche of R strategists. The R strategists support variations of abiotic and biotic conditions for each parameter, taking into account their load demands. Their ecological niche, which represents the hypervolume common to all these parameters, will therefore be very large, so they have large potentialities. Just as a worker may know a great deal but do a job in a mediocre way, the R strategists exploit their environment poorly. On the other hand, they are very comfortable in a new ecosystem because it meets all their needs, since there are no competitors. B. The ecological niche of K strategists. Gradually, the generalist species face competition from less wasteful species that are better adapted and have more precise functions. These latter species, the K strategists, are located only on a very small part of the food spectrum and therefore rarely compete with each other. There are thus numerous species within a single ecosystem, but the number of individuals is limited by the biological potential of their ecological niche. As they reduce their energy losses in the cycling of matter to a minimum, K strategists soon occupy the entire ecosystem. The hyperlume that characterizes their specific ecological niche will be very small. They have a limited function, but they carry it out with maximum efficiency. The K strategists thus have tiny ecological niches that are very narrow and close to one another, but each niche is occupied. It is because of this that a mature ecosystem is well balanced. C. The strategists in the actual niche will show that the fundamental niche of R strategists is wide and that of K strategists is very narrow. In fact, the fundamental niche of R strategists is so large that their actual niche in a given ecosystem may appear different from that found in another ecosystem. Nevertheless, it remains within the hyperlume of the species considered on the global scale. The conditions of life of a copod, Acanthodioptimus, for example, may be defined by Japanese researchers in a very precise context in their country. Those researchers may on the other hand be contradicted by French or Polish researchers too. The extent of the actual niche of this copod in any of these countries constitutes only a part of its fundamental niche on the global scale. Such is not the case with the K strategists, for which the fundamental niche is so narrow that there are only a few variations possible for the actual niche. 5. Ecological niche and the Gauss principle. According to Gauss, it is acknowledged that two species that possess the same ecological niche cannot live together in the same ecosystem. This is the principle of reciprocal exclusion, which is linked to competition. If this principle seems true, in the absolute, it will nevertheless probably be inapplicable in nature because there are a number of dimensions of niches in an ecosystem. To prove this, we can reproduce an example from Blundell and Frockoff pig. These authors show that bird species in a forest whose food corresponds to the same part of the food spectrum live together in a forest by exploiting different strata. Resource partitioning. Extinction of one of two populations living symmetrically and competing over too many resources is not the only possible outcome of interspecific competition. An alternative outcome is the evolution of a divergence of resource needs. Such a divergence is called resource partitioning, and is simply the ecological version of the idea that it is often easier to switch than it is to fight. Character displacement. Character displacement is presumably a consequence of resource partitioning. The tendency for characters to be more divergent in sympatric populations of two species and allopatric population of the same two species is called character displacement. That is, characters diverge presumably in response to interspecific competition, but do not diverge in populations not subject to the same interspecific competition. Thus, the character differs between the population undergoing interspecific competition and the population not undergoing interspecific competition. B2. Niche differentiation and resource partitioning. The term niche differentiation, synonymous with niche segregation, niche separation and niche partitioning, as it applies to the field of ecology, refers to the process by which natural selection drives competing species into different patterns of resource use or different niches. This process allows two species to partition certain resources so that one species does not outcompete the other as dictated by the competitive exclusion principle. Thus, coexistence is obtained through the differentiation of the realized ecological niches. Niche differentiation is a process which occurs through several different modes and on multiple temporal and spatial scales. In most cases, niche differentiation has created a relationship between two species where current competition is small or non-existent. Because of this, the presence of niche differentiation can be methodologically difficult to prove or disprove. The lack of evidence for current or past competition can blur the line between two competitive species differentiating their niches to allow coexistence as opposed to two non-competing species which occupy similar niches. It is important to keep in mind that niche differentiation and interspecific competition cannot always be considered linked. As an example of resource partitioning, 7 anolis lizards in tropical rainforests share common food needs, mainly insects. They avoid competition by occupying different sections of the rainforest. Some live on the leaf litter floor while others live on shady branches, thereby avoiding competition over food in those sections of the forest. All resources are subject to partitioning, for example, space, food, nesting sites. This minimizes competition between similar species. Niche differentiation, detection and quantification. The Leckable-Terra equation states that two competing species can coexist when interspecific. Within species, competition is greater than interspecific between species. Competition, Armstrong and McGee 1980. Since niche differentiation concentrates competition within species, due to a decrease in between species competition, the Leckable-Terra model predicts that niche differentiation of any degree will result in coexistence. In reality, this still leaves the question of how much differentiation is needed for coexistence. Hutchinson 1959. A vague answer to this question is that the more similar two species are, the more finely balanced the suitability of their environment must be in order to allow coexistence. There are limits to the amount of niche differentiation required for coexistence, and this can vary with the type of resource, the nature of the environment, and the amount of variation both within and between the species. To answer questions about niche differentiation, it is necessary for ecologists to be able to detect, measure, and quantify the niches of different coexisting and competing species. This is often done through a combination of detailed studies, controlled experiments to determine the strength of competition, and mathematical models. Strong 1982, Leibold 1995. To understand the mechanisms of niche differentiation and competition, much data must be gathered on how the two species interact, how they use their resources, and the type of ecosystem in which they exist, among other factors. In addition, several mathematical models exist to quantify niche breadth, competition, and coexistence. Bastella et al. 2005. However, regardless of methods used, niches in competition can be distinctly difficult to measure quantitatively, and this makes detection and demonstration of niche differentiation difficult and complex. Development of niche differentiation. Over time, two competing species can either coexist through niche differentiation or other means, or compete until one species becomes locally extinct. Several theories exist for how niche differentiation arises or evolves given these two possible outcomes. Current competition. Niche differentiation can arise from current competition. For instance, species X has a fundamental niche of the entire slope of a hillside, but its realized niche is only the top portion of the slope because species Y, which is a better competitor but cannot survive on the top portion of the slope, has excluded it from the lower portion of the slope. With this scenario, competition will continue indefinitely in the middle of the slope between these two species. Because of this, detection of the presence of niche differentiation through competition will be relatively easy. It is also important to remember that there is no evolutionary change of the individual species in this case. Rather, this is an ecological effect of species Y outcompeting species X within the bounds of species Y's fundamental niche. Via past extinctions. Another way by which niche differentiation can arise is via the previous elimination of species without realized niches. This asserts that at some point in the past, several species inhabited an area, and all of these species had overlapping fundamental niches. However, through competitive exclusion, the less competitive species were eliminated, leaving only the species that were able to coexist, i.e. the most competitive species whose realized niches did not overlap. Again, this process does not include any evolutionary change of individual species, but it is merely the product of the competitive exclusion principle. Also, because no species is outcompeting any other species in the final community, the presence of niche differentiation will be difficult or impossible to detect. Evolving differences. Finally, niche differentiation can arise as an evolutionary effect of competition. In this case, two competing species will evolve different patterns of resource use so as to avoid competition. Here too, current competition is absent or low, and therefore detection of niche differentiation is difficult or impossible. Types of niche differentiation. Resource partitioning. When two species partition divide a resource based on behavioral or morphological variation, it is termed differential resource utilization or resource partitioning. There are three types of differential resource utilization. Temporal partitioning. Temporal resource partitioning is when two species eliminate direct competition by utilizing the same resource at different times. This can be on a daily scale, e.g. one species of spiny mouse feeds on insects during the day while a second species of spiny mouse feeds on the same insects at night. Kronfeld, Shore and Dion 1999, or on a longer, seasonal scale. An instance of the latter would be reproductive asynchrony, or the division of resources by the separation of breeding periods. An example of reproductive asynchrony would be two competing species. This can be on a daily scale, e.g. one species of spiny mouse feeds on insects during the day while a second species of spiny mouse feeds on the same insects at night. Kronfeld, Shore and Dion 1999, or on a longer, seasonal scale. An instance of the latter would be reproductive asynchrony, or the division of resources by the separation of breeding periods. An example of reproductive asynchrony would be two competing species of frog offsetting their breeding periods. By doing this, the first species tadpoles will have graduated to a different food resource by the time the tadpoles of the second species are hatching, Lawler and Moore 1993. Spatial partitioning. Spatial resource partitioning occurs when two competing species use the same resource by occupying different areas or habitats within the range of occurrence of the resource. Spatial partitioning can occur at small scales, microhabitat differentiation, or at large scales, geographical differentiation. Microhabitat differentiation occurs when two competing species with overlapping home ranges partition a resource. Two examples would be different species of fish feeding at different depths in a lake or different species of monkey feeding at different heights in a tree. Geographical differentiation is when two competing species have non-overlapping home ranges and thus partition resources. An example might begin with monkeys again, two competing species of monkey using the same species of fruit trees, but in different areas of the forest. Morphological differentiation. The final type of differential resource utilization is morphological differentiation or niche complementarity. Morphological differentiation happens when two competing species evolve different morphologies to allow them to use a resource in different ways. A classic example of this is a study detailing the link between bumblebee proboscis lengths and flower corolla lengths, Pike 1982. In this study, the long proboscis species would preferentially feed on the long corolla plants, the medium proboscis species would feed on the medium corolla plants, and so on. By evolving different proboscis lengths, several competing bee species are able to partition the available resources and coexist. Conditional differentiation. The second form of niche differentiation is conditional differentiation, which occurs when two competing species differ in their abilities to use a resource based on varying environmental conditions. One species may be more competitive in one set of environmental conditions, but another species is more competitive in another set of conditions. Therefore, in a varying environment, each species is sometimes a better competitor and they can coexist. Differentiation based on environmental conditions is often difficult to separate from resource differentiation, and often conditional differentiation includes one or more types of resource partitioning. Utilization of two resources, Tillmans R***. The final type of niche differentiation is based on Tillmans' 1990 notion that if two species are competing for the same exact resource, then the ultimate winner will be the species which can deplete the resource the lowest, surviving on the lowest amount of the resource. This alone does not allow coexistence. However, if two species rely on two resources differentially, then coexistence is possible when each species can tolerate a lower amount of only one resource compared to its competitor. An example would be if grass species 1 is more limited by nutrient B than and grass species 2 is more limited by nutrient than B, then if species 1 uses more nutrient B than and species 2 uses more nutrient than B, species 1 can outcompete species 2 for nutrient A and species 2 can outcompete species 1 for nutrient B. Additionally, the starting point for each nutrient's availability must be roughly an equal distance from each species limits, i.e. no species can quickly lower one resource while the other is still in abundance. Coexistence is now possible because each species uses more of the nutrient that limits its own growth, but each still requires both nutrients to survive. This subtle form of niche differentiation is dependent on two conditions. One, the habitat needs to be such that one species is more limited by one resource, and the other species is more limited by the other resource, and two, each species must consume more of the resource that strongly limits its own growth. Coexistence without niche differentiation. Exceptions to the rule. Some competing species have been shown to coexist on the same resource with no observable evidence of niche differentiation and in violation of the competitive exclusion principle. One instance is in a group of hispine beetle species, Strong 1982. These beetle species, which eat the same food and occupy the same habitat, coexist without any evidence of segregation or exclusion. The beetles show no aggression either inter or interspecifically. Coexistence may be possible through a combination of non-limiting food and habitat resources and high rates of predation and parasitism, though this has not been demonstrated. This example illustrates that the evidence for niche differentiation is by no means universal. Niche differentiation is also not the only means by which coexistence is possible between two competing species. See Schmid et al. 1984. However, niche differentiation is a critically important ecological idea which explains species coexistence, thus promoting the high biodiversity often seen in many of the world's biomes. B3. Character displacement. Character displacement refers to the phenomenon where differences among similar species whose distributions overlap geographically are accentuated in regions where the species co-occur but are minimized or lost where the species distributions do not overlap. This pattern results from evolutionary change driven by competition among species for a limited resource, e.g. food. The rationale for character displacement stems from the competitive exclusion principle, also called Gauss's law, which contends that to coexist in a stable environment two competing species must differ in their respective ecological niche. Without differentiation, one species will eliminate or exclude the other through competition. Character displacement was first explicitly explained by Brown and Wilson, 1956. Two closely related species have overlapping ranges. In the parts of the ranges where one species occurs alone, the populations of that species are similar to the other species and may even be very difficult to distinguish from it. In the area of overlap, where the two species occur together, the populations are more divergent and easily distinguished, i.e., they displace one another in one or more characters. The characters involved can be morphological, ecological, behavioral, or physiological. They are assumed to be genetically based. Brown and Wilson 1956 use the term character displacement to refer to instances of both reproductive character displacement, or reinforcement of reproductive barriers, and ecological character displacement driven by competition. As the term character displacement is commonly used, it generally refers to morphological differences due to competition. Brown and Wilson view character displacement as phenomenon involved in speciation, stating, we believe that it is a common aspect of geographical speciation, arising most often as a product of the genetic and ecological interaction of two or more newly evolved, cognate species derived from the same immediate parental species during the period of first contact, 1956. While character displacement is important in various scenarios of speciation, including adaptive radiations like the cyclic fish ponds in the rift lakes of East Africa, it also plays an important role in structuring communities. The results of numerous studies contribute evidence that character displacement often influences the evolution of resource acquisition among members of an ecological guild. Competitive release, defined as the expansion of an ecological niche in the absence of a competitor, is essentially the mirror image of character displacement. It too was described by Brown and Wilson 1956. Two closely related species are distinct where they occur together, but where one member of the pair occurs alone, it converges toward the second, even to the extent of being nearly identical within some characters. Examples. While studies on character displacement have been performed in a wide variety of taxa, a few groups have disproportionately contributed our understanding of this principle. Mammalian carnivores, Galapagos finches, Anolis lizards on islands, three-spine stickleback fish and snails. In the initial explication of character displacement, many of the examples they set forth as potential evidence for character displacement were observations between multiple pairs of birds. These included rock nuthatches in Asia, Australian honeyeaters of the genus Mizantha, Australian parrots, shearwaters in the Cape Verde Islands, flycatchers of the Bismarck Archipelago, and notably, Darwin's finches in the Galapagos. Lack 1947 found that when the two species Geospiza fortis and G. phylogenosa occurred on large islands together, they could be distinguished unequivocally by beak size. When either one occurred by itself on a smaller island, however, the beak size was intermediate in size relative to when the two co-occurred. The lizard genus Anolis on the islands in the Caribbean has also been the subject of numerous studies investigating the role of competition and character displacement in community structure. Lesser Antilles islands can only support Anolis species of different sizes, and the relative importance of character displacement versus size of colonization in determining invasion success has been explored and debated. Three-spine sticklebacks Gastroscius spp. In post-glacial lakes in western Canada have contributed significantly to recent research of character displacement. Both observations of natural populations and manipulated experiments show that when two recently evolved species occur in a single lake, two morphologies are selected for: a limnetic form that feeds in open water and a benthic form that feeds at the lake bottom. They differ in size, shape, and the number and length of gill rakers, all of which is related to divergence in their diet. Hybrids between the two forms are selected against. When only one species inhabits a lake, that fish displays an intermediate morphology. Studies on other fish species have shown similar patterns of selection for benthic and limnetic morphologies, which can also lead to sympatric speciation. The Appalachian salamanders collected on Hoffmannian Peace areas displayed no trophic, morphological, or resource use differences among allopatric populations. When the species occurred in symmetry, however, they displayed morphological differentiation that was associated with segregation in prey size. Where these two species co-occurred, P. Hoffmanni had a faster closing jaw required for larger prey, and Peace areas had a slower, stronger jaw for smaller prey. Other studies have found collected on salamander species that demonstrate character displacement from aggressive behavioral interference rather than exploitation. That is, morphological character displacement between the two species is due to aggressive interaction between them rather than the exploitation of different food resources. It is often assumed that closely related species are more likely to compete than are more distantly related species, and hence many researchers investigate character displacement among congeners. While character displacement was originally discussed in the context of very closely related species, evidence suggests that even interactions among distantly related species can result in character displacement. Finches and bees in the Galapagos may provide an interesting example. Two finch species, Geospiza phylogenosa and G. difficilis, exploit more flower nectar on islands where the lager carpenter bee, Xylophila darwini, is absent than on islands with the bees. Individual finches that harvest nectar are smaller than conspecifics that do not. Introduced species have also provided recent, natural experiments to investigate how rapidly character displacement can affect evolutionary change. When American mink Mustela bizone was introduced in northeastern Belarus, the native European mink Mustela lutriola increased in size, and the introduced mink decreased in size. This displacement was observed within a 10-year study, demonstrating that competition can drive rapid evolutionary change. Conceptual development. Character displacement is a situation in which, when two species of animals overlap geographically, the differences between them are accentuated in the zone of symmetry and weakened or lost entirely in the parts of their ranges outside this zone. While the term ecological character displacement first appeared in the scientific literature in 1956, the idea has earlier roots. For example, Joseph Grinnell, in the classic paper that set forth the concept of the ecological niche, 1917, stated, "It is, of course, axiomatic that no two species regularly established in a single fauna have precisely the same niche requirements. The existence of character displacement is evidence that the two species do not completely overlap in their niche requirement." Following the dissemination of the concept, character displacement was viewed as an important force in structuring ecological communities, and biologists identified numerous examples. During the late 1970s and early 1980s, however, the role of competition and character displacement in structuring communities was questioned and its importance greatly downgraded. Many found the early examples unconvincing and suggested it to be a rare phenomenon. Criticisms with earlier studies included the lack of rigor in statistical analyses and the use of poorly rationalized characters. Additionally, theory seemed to indicate that the conditions that allowed character displacement to occur were limited. This scrutiny helped motivate theoretical and methodological advances as well as the development of a more rigorous framework for testing character displacement. 6 criteria have been developed to establish character displacement as a mechanism for differences between sympatric species. These include: 1. Differences between sympatric taxa are greater than expected by chance. 2. Differences in character states are related to differences in resource use. 3. Resources are limiting, and interspecific competition for these resources is a function of character similarity. 4. Resource distribution of the same in symmetry and allometry such that differences in character states are not due to differences in resource availability. 5. Differences must have evolved in situ. 6. Differences must be genetically based. Rigorously testing these criteria necessitates a synthetic approach, combining areas of research like community ecology, functional morphology, adaptation, quantitative genetics, and phylogenetic systematics. While satisfying all 6 criteria in a single study of character displacement is not often feasible, they provide the necessary context for research of character displacement. C1. Population ecology. Population ecology studies organisms from the point of view of the size and structure of their populations. The population ecologist studies the interaction of organisms with their environments by measuring properties of populations rather than the behavior of individual organisms. Properties of populations include population size, population density, density patterns of dispersion, demographics, population growth, limits on population growth limits. Note that all of these properties are not those of individual organisms, but instead are properties which exist only if one considers more than one organism at any given time, or over a period of time, i.e., they are emergent properties. The characteristics of a population are shaped by the interactions between individuals and their environments on both ecological and evolutionary timescales, and natural selection can modify these characteristics in a population. Thus, population ecology also goes beyond consideration of just population parameters and additionally considers how the characteristics of individual organisms impact on population parameters, population properties. 1. Population. A population in an ecological sense is a group of organisms of the same species which roughly occupy the same geographical area at the same time. Individual members of the same population can either interact directly or may interact with the dispersing progeny of other members of the same population, e.g., pollen. Population members interact with a similar environment and experience similar environmental limitations. 2. Population size. A population size depends on how the population is defined. If a population is defined in terms of some degree of reproductive isolation, then the population size is the size of its gene pool. If a population is defined in terms of some geographical range, then the population size is the number of individuals living in the defined area. Ecologists typically are more concerned with the latter means of defining a population since this is both easier to do and is a more practical measure if one is interested in determining the impact of a given population on a given ecosystem, or vice versa. 3. Population density. Given that a population is defined in terms of some natural or arbitrarily defined geographical range, then population density may be defined as simply the number of individual organisms per unit area. Different species, of course, exist at different densities in their environments, and the same species may be able to achieve one density in one environment and another in a different environment. Population densities may additionally be determined in terms of some measure other than population size per unit area, such as population mass per unit area. Crude density is the density number of biomass per unit total space. Specific or ecological or economic density is the density number of biomass per unit of habitat space, i.e. available area or volume that can actually be colonized by the population. 4. Patterns of dispersion. Individual members of populations may be distributed over a geographical area in a number of different ways, including clump distribution. Attraction. Clumping may result either from individual organisms being attracted to each other, or individual organisms being attracted more to some patches within a range than they are to other patches. The net effect is that some parts of the range will have a large number of individuals, whereas others will contain few or none. Uniform distribution. Repulsion. A uniform distribution means that approximately the same distance may be found between individual organisms. Uniform distributions result from individual organisms actively repelling each other. Random distribution. Minimal interaction. Influence. A random distribution means that where individual organisms are found is only minimally influenced by interactions with other members of the same population, and random distributions are uncommon. Random spacing occurs in the absence of strong attractions or repulsions among individuals of a population. Note that both clumping and uniform distribution suggest that individual organisms are either interacting with one another, actively seeking each other out, or actively avoiding each other, or all competing with one another for the same limited resources, regardless of the overall population density, as in the case of clumping, which results from geographical patchiness. Individual members of populations may be distributed over a geographical area in a number of different ways, including clump distribution. Attraction. Clumping may result either from individual organisms being attracted to each other, or individual organisms being attracted more to some patches within a range than they are to other patches. The net effect is that some parts of the range will have a large number of individuals, whereas others will contain few or none. Uniform distribution. Repulsion. A uniform distribution means that approximately the same distance may be found between individual organisms. Clump distribution. Attraction. Clumping may result either from individual organisms being attracted to each other, or individual organisms being attracted more to some patches within a range than they are to other patches. The net effect is that some parts of the range will have a large number of individuals, whereas others will contain few or none. Uniform distribution. Repulsion. A uniform distribution means that approximately the same distance may be found between individual organisms.